Brilliant. Well, good morning, everyone. Pop that a little bit here. Everyone hear me all right? Is it picking me up? Fine? I don't like it being too much in my face. There we are. No, it's great to be with you all today again. Some of the brothers, we were away this weekend. We had a great brothers retreat. Lots of fun, lots of fellowship, lots of late nights, not very much sleep. Some great weather, great conversation. It was a great weekend. Really, really good fun. Really good food as well. It was just great to be with everyone. But as such, I have paper notes today. There's no iPad, no laptop. It's all paper. But it's good. Paper's good. I feel like, with all the devices, you kind of forget how to write and spell. Ever write something and you're like, wait, how do I... You're so used to autocorrect clicking in for you. But anyway, that's a side point. We're going to be talking about Matthew chapter 18 today. And we're going to talk, a bit of a challenging text, but, quite a necessary one as well. And so in Matthew 18, the title of the sermon today is Hopping on Heaven's Road. Hopping on Heaven's Road. You're like, but that's not the song, Jamie, it's walking. There's a reason for that. We'll come to that. So in Matthew chapter 18, and starting in verse 6, the Bible reads, "If anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung round their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. Woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. If your hand or your foot causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to stumble, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life with 1 eye than to have 2 eyes and be thrown into the fire of hell." And we'll stop there for now. The title of my first point today is Cut It Off. And when we read through Matthew 18, and it says at the beginning of verse 6 that if anyone causes one of these little ones, those who believe in me, to stumble. And it's an interesting way of Jesus phrasing, and he's saying that if you believe in him, you're like a little one. You're like a child. And that comes from in the previous verses, from verses 1 to 5. In verse 2 of Matthew 18, a little bit further up, he says, "He called a child to him and placed a child among them, and he said, 'Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven.'" And it's interesting, becoming like a child in order to believe God, in order to believe Jesus. It's strange to think that you've got to be childlike. At this time, children were overlooked. They weren't really seen as anything important in society. A child doesn't earn money. Child doesn't pay any taxes. Child doesn't contribute to the community. Children are dependent on their parents, on people around them to look after them, for their safety, for their clothes, for their food. Maybe some of the parents can relate today, even if you've got teenagers. Children aren't self-reliant. Children are curious. Sometimes to the point of bothersome, but curious nonetheless. But, they're overlooked. They're not really seen as anything. Scholars at the time wouldn't write grand stories urging people to be like children. They've got nothing to commend them, no achievements to put themselves forward. But it's for all of these reasons that Jesus is telling his disciples here, that's who he's talking to, that you've got to be like children to get to the kingdom. Because for all of these reasons, because it's people that are dependent on God, who is the Father. People who are curious and eager and seeking to learn. People who aren't reliant on themselves, but are reliant on God. And this is what Jesus wants them to understand and see, that this is why he calls them little ones. It's actually an encouragement to them to be like a little one. And so with that vein in mind, he then goes on to talk about causing these ones to stumble. How people view his followers. And he tells his disciples to not cause anyone who believes in him to stumble. Or a better way, not to cause anyone who believes in him to sin. Or to lead them into bad or wrong behavior. To not be an example for other people of sin. And, the phrasing is interesting. He says that, in verse 7, woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come. He's saying, look, the world isn't great. It causes sin. It causes people to stumble. It causes, trouble. But it's kind of this resignation of, but it's going to come. It's going to happen. But then even more so, woe to the person through whom it comes. The world is bad enough as it is. Why be someone that's going to lead people into sin, into causing people to stumble? And he says instead that it would be better, instead of leading someone to stumble, it's better to have a millstone tied around your neck and drowned in the depths of the sea. A millstone is a giant rock that was used. You'd have a rock on the bottom, a long pole, and then a rock on top of it. And the holes fit through it. And a donkey or an ox or something would pull it around a track. And you would use it to grind the grain to make flour. But it's a heavy, heavy stone. It's not like you're going to put it on and swim. You're going straight down. It is better to have that than to cause people to stumble, he's saying. And, it's a hard teaching that he's giving them. And then he says to them instead, in order to deal with that, the response is to cut it off. To cut off whatever is going to cause that stumbling. To get rid of it. It's common at this time, if you got sick or something happened to one of your limbs, say your limb got crushed by the grinding millstone, that you would cut it off because it's not going to do anything. It's going to hinder you. It's going to make life difficult. And so here he's telling them, look, if your foot or your hand causes you to stumble, cut it off and throw it away. That's hard. That level of seriousness to what's going to cause them to stumble, get rid of it. And he says it is better to enter life maimed or crippled than to have 2 hands or 2 feet and be thrown into hell. In some ways, it is a no-brainer for the disciples here. I want to get to heaven. I want to have life. So let me get rid of what needs to get rid of. But without saying it, it's sometimes hard to think about that. It's difficult to see it that way. I'm sure none of them would ever pick the option of you can keep all of your limbs but go to hell. Or you can lose your hand or your foot or your eye and go to heaven. None of them are picking the first option. But this is the seriousness that Jesus gives towards dealing with things that cause people and themselves to stumble. And the promise of heaven should outweigh any kind of hold over those parts, as it were. And so they've got to be ready to cut off whatever it's going to take, and hence the title, be ready to hop along heaven's road. Well, there we are. Oh, there we go. Look at that. As I said, it is a bit like having an infected limb. If you had part of your body that was, gangrenous, was rotting, was pussing, was limp, was a bit not pleasant, you'd be mad to say, oh, I'm going to keep this limb. You know? If there's nothing for it, you'd be mad to try and keep hold of it. You know, it's going to cause pain towards yourself. You know, it's going to, probably cause some discomfort and maybe sickness to those around you. The wise move is to cut it off, to get rid of it, to stop it hanging onto your body and causing harm to you. And so as we look at this first part and this idea of cutting off, I think a number of different questions arise. I think the first thing to think about is, first, what is your approach to Jesus today? If we go back and we see that he's calling the people here to be like children. Is that how you come towards God? Do you come to God like a child? Or is instead your approach to God more of a self-reliant adult, coming with your achievements, your worth, your pride in yourself, that you know what to do? In verse 3, he says that, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven, unless you become like a little child. Part of getting to God, part of finding God is being childlike, is having that heart that is dependent on him. He wants you to be trusting of him. Children have that sort of innate trusting sense sometimes, which is amazing. It's so funny. People often say that everyone in my family on my dad's side, we all look kind of similar in some way. And they always they've warned my wife Helen and I many times that when you're in a room with the Akinlades, they all look the same, sound the same, laugh at the same jokes, and you're all confused. But, with my cousins, when I've never met my cousins before, the little ones that were born over lockdown, and we went to the house to see them, and we're told by my aunt, oh, careful, they're not good with strangers. And you open the front door, and they just come, and they're just like this. It's lovely, but it's trusting. They see it, and they're like, I can trust this person. Jesus wants the same. He wants you to view him that way. To be dependent on him and his ways and his teachings for life. Eager to learn, to change, and to be molded to be someone better. That's the mindset you've got to have when it comes to God. When it comes to getting to know him, is being like a child in that. It does take that step to say, I don't know how to get through life. I don't know how to look after myself. I need God in order to look after myself. In order to get through life, sorry. But then the second thing as well, the second question that this raises as well is, what needs to be cut off in your life? I'm not talking about cutting off limbs. We're not talking about that today. I've got a gruesome story about that, but I won't share it here. If you want to know what it is, you can come ask me later about someone and cutting things off. But more so, what is the sin in your life? What is the bad behavior? What is the destructive behavior in your life you need to cut off, get rid of? What is it that you've just been giving into again and again and again and again? That's leading you into trouble. What do you need to get rid of or stop doing? I think of a few examples in my life personally of this cutting off and getting rid of things that are going to lead me to stumble, that are going to cause me to stumble and sin. I think about my phone and my iPad and things. I don't have any social media on there at all. I don't have Instagram, I don't have Facebook, I don't have anything at all. I don't have YouTube on my phone, all sorts of things that you're like, yeah, but come on, you need that, you need this. It makes sense to have it. But for me, these are all avenues of temptation. And the risk of sin far outweighs any sense of missing out for me. I do miss some interesting things. I do miss some cool posts. People that post on Facebook and they're like, got married, this happened, that happened. One of my good friends, he posted on Facebook that they're having a kid soon. But I didn't know. I didn't get to see it. Helen had to be like, oh, did you know this? I was like, no, Because I don't have it anywhere to see it. And so there is sometimes that fear of missing out. But my mindset is I've got to get rid of it because it's going to cause me to stumble. As a student, I gave up friendships and friendship groups. I remember being part of groups at university and having to go and tell them, hey, I can't be friends with you guys anymore. The conversations we have, the things that we do, they negatively impact my relationship with God. I was an absolute weirdo and all laughed and had a good time laughing about it. But I needed to do it. I needed to cut those friendships off because they weren't helping me in my pursuit of God. Perhaps even a more trivial one. I just for many years, I can say I've changed and there's repentance there now. But for many years, I had to stop playing FIFA with other people. FIFA's a football game on the PlayStation, if you're not familiar. You can play on Xbox, but I wouldn't. But, I had to stop playing it against people because, I would get so wound up and so aggressive and so angry if I lost. It would, I'd turn it off. I'd have resentment in my heart for that person for the next week over a game of FIFA. I had to stop. So people would go around people's houses. Jamie, do you want to play FIFA? No, I can't. I can't play FIFA. In my heart, I was like, if I play, it's not going to go well today. But all of these things, all of these areas in my life needed to be cut off so that I could be a better child of God. Because that's where these two things link up. The cutting off is not just for the sake of cutting off. It's cutting off so that you can be a better child of God. So that you can live a better life for God. None of these things were worth anything close to me having a relationship with God and being on the road to getting to heaven. I would rather hop to heaven than to have all of these things and be complete and not get there. So what is it for you today that needs to be cut off? So that you don't lead yourself or other people to hell. Is it the company that you keep? The people that you hang out with, your friends, your colleagues? Perhaps you need to reevaluate some of those relationships. Because like I did. In 1 Corinthians chapter 15, in verse 33, it talks that bad company corrupts good character. Surrounding yourself with people that don't have the same way of living as you is going to negatively impact you and your pursuit of God. Perhaps it does mean, missing out on some people who are quote unquote fun. But are they fun for the right reasons? Is it how you use the internet? Do you need to cut off in some of those areas? Do you need to put some filters up? Give a friend of yours the access code. This is something that's helped me many times in the past. If someone's giving my friend in another city the access code. And yes, it's annoying when I'm trying to find a recipe about how to make bread, and for some reason my internet blocks it. And you're like, this is frustrating, and I'm missing out on making bread. But it stopped me from being led into sin. Perhaps it's your work or your career that needs some cutting, needs some changing. Is it keeping you from seeking God first and foremost in your life? Is all of your time spent working or trying to earn money? Is that the focus of your life? And it can be hard. I'm not saying it's not hard, and I'm not saying that it's just going to be an easy decision to make. But it is worthwhile doing. Because if you don't, you're just setting yourself up for trouble. In 1 Peter chapter 5, this is a verse I like a lot. I read a book about this as well. It's brilliant. 1 Peter chapter 5 in verse 8. It says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith. You know, lions don't pick the strongest animal to attack. Lions pick the weakest, most sick-looking, old, wobbly animal to hunt. And if you're keeping these things around you that are causing you to stumble, Satan's looking at you regularly. It's about getting rid of them, not giving him that edge to get into your life. But even to think about the example that you set for other people to follow. You know, if you're sitting here today, if you're a disciple, perhaps the question more is, what has crept back in to your life? You know, perhaps, what did you cut off a while ago, but it's maybe kind of researched. You've kind of maybe installed something again. You've taken something off. You've gone after something new, but it was something you wouldn't have done a while ago. Well, perhaps now it's something that wasn't an issue for you, but now needs to be cut off. But if you're sitting here and you're not even sure what that even looks like, what does it mean? How do I know what I need to cut off? You know, I encourage you, ask someone today. Ask someone who brought you today. You know, what is it, talk about, hey, what does my life look like? What does it mean to cut things off? What does that look like? Share your life and see what the Bible says about how you live and about the things that need to be cut off. Because it is far better to go through this life crippled, missing out on things, and get to heaven than to seemingly have everything and end up in hell. Are you going to cut off that limb and hop along? Which brings me to my second point today. A little bit more encouraging. My second point is, know that you are wanted. And we'll read in verse 10 in Matthew 18. And it says here, see that you do not despise one of these little ones. For I tell you that their angels in heaven always see the face of my Father in heaven. What do you think? If a man owns 100 sheep, and one of them wanders away, will he not leave the 99 on the hills and go to look for the one that has wandered off? And if he finds it, truly I tell you, he is happier about that one sheep than about the 99 that did not wander off. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. Bear with me a second. And so in this second chunk of text, Jesus is going on to talk to them again. He's saying, look, first of all, you shouldn't have disregard or contempt for any of the people who follow me. Instead, the attitude to have is of this shepherd that he describes. He's demonstrating to them through this parable God's love, God's eagerness for them. And you see this shepherd, and it says that if he loses one sheep out of 100, he goes out of his way to search for it. He's going off into the wilderness looking for it. I don't know where it is, but he's gone to find it. Now, sheep are pretty thick. They're not the smartest animals in the world. They wander off a decent amount. If I was this farmer, I'd be thinking, I don't really want to go after this useless sheep, to be honest. I'm quite happy with the 99 I've got to look after. But thankfully, the shepherd isn't like me. The shepherd is like, I see this one sheep and I need to get it. I need to bring it back. He's desperately going. You can imagine being a shepherd in this point is not an easy lifestyle. You don't have a tractor. You don't have a car you can drive through the fields and the lanes and see. You've got to hike up cliffs. It's hot. You've got sandals on your feet. It's not the best hiking footwear. It's hard work. You might find the sheep. You've got to bring it back. You've got to carry it. You see that lovely picture of sheep on the shoulders? Sheep smell horrific. So having a sheep on your shoulder is not a pleasant experience. But this is the shepherd's mindset, is that he doesn't want any sheep to be out in the wilderness alone. He wants all the sheep to be safe, even if it means leaving 99 to find one that's lost. And this, Jesus says, is exactly what God is like. That he wants everyone to come to him. He doesn't want anyone to perish, as he says in verse 14. In the same way, your Father in heaven is not willing that any of these little ones should perish. The little ones, the children of God. Those who are following him and continuing to be called, children. That is God's love. That is God's care, his attention, and his desire that extends to everyone, even those who do wander off. And in fact, he celebrates, he's happier when he finds that one sheep that wanders off. In 13, if he finds it, truly I tell you, he's happier about that one than about the 99 that did not wander off. God is happier finding the people that wander off. He's still happy about the 99, but it's that joy of finding that person, bringing that person back. There's no grudge. There's no sense of, this useless sheep. All right, come on. It's joy. It's eagerness there. There's no punishment. He's not thinking, right, this is the one I'm going to line up to put in the pot next. He loves it the same. And it really is an amazing feeling when you go through life knowing that someone wants you. Knowing that you are wanted, that you're loved, that you are sought after. I've played sports a lot of my life. I've played football for many, many years of my life. Probably, I think it's a sport that every boy plays for most of their life. And I didn't actually get good at football till I was about 16. So before then, I was a very, very, very bad footballer. And what that meant was, when you're at school and you've got your team captains, I was inevitably picked last a lot of the time. And anyone who's been in that situation, you know what it's like. You're there, and then I'll have that one, and that one, and that, and then it's down to the last two. And then the two captains get together, they put their heads together, and they're like, I mean, he's tall, but and they're like, let's just flip a coin. It's not encouraging. You feel not great. Your shoulders slump. You get in play, and you're not really there. You're kind of just because you don't feel like anyone wants you there. The motivation to work hard to do anything for the team is just a bit non-existent. But the opposite is true when you're wanted by it. I remember when I eventually got a little bit better at football, and I was playing at my school. We had one football game we had, and our normal captain wasn't there for the day. And so they were like, we need a captain. And the whole team were like, Jamie, you be the captain. I was like, I was overwhelmed. The joy that filled me up. And they all voted, Jamie, you're the captain today. You take the captain's armband. I still don't know why they picked me, but I know they did. And it was a fantastic feeling. And I think I played one of my best games of football ever. I play in defence, I'm a tool, I play as a centre-back. And in that game I scored one of my 3 career goals of football. I was up and down the pitch, running around, I felt like I had endless energy, felt like my asthma didn't exist anymore. It was world class for a day. I think that's how I felt in my head anyway. But it's amazing how the attitude changes when you know that you're wanted, when people believe in you and desperately are pushing you. And so really this final chunk of passage is really an encouragement today for you, but also a reminder that God wants you. I appreciate what Mercy was sharing in the communion, how God was searching for her far and wide. God is searching for you. He has been searching for you. He is searching for you. He doesn't want you to perish out in the wilderness, like it says in verse 14. He wants you to find safety. He wants you to find forgiveness and freedom from your sin, from your past life, and ultimately salvation. Like the shepherd, he is searching for you. I believe even you being here today, if it's your first time or maybe you've come a little bit and you're kind of testing the waters a little bit, I believe that this is part of his search for you. He seriously wants to have a part of your life, to be part of your life. But his wanting should motivate you to seek him back. I appreciate Ed, clearly great minds think alike. Acts 17 was what I wanted to share on this one. I'll read a little bit of it again. Acts 17, verse 26. From one man he made all the nations, that they should inhabit the whole earth. And he marked out their appointed times in history and the boundaries of their lands. God did this so that they would seek him and perhaps reach out for him and find him, though he is not far from any one of us. This attitude, learning this attitude of God today, it should push you to want to seek him. Knowing that he is there searching for you should be a motivation to be like, okay, I'm going to come looking right back at you. He does all of these amazing things in your life, sets up your life in such a way so that you might seek and find him. There's that promise that you will find him. And even more so, linking it up to this cutting off, this is the motivation to get rid of the sin, to get rid of the destructive behaviors in your life. It should encourage you because he wants you. Knowing that encourages me so much to live a godly life. It encourages me, it helps me see, look, it's not just me going after God, me making changes, me doing this, me sacrificing. God is looking for me. God is putting situations in my life so that I can get closer to him. And he's doing the same thing for you today. And I hope it does do that for you today. As a disciple today, I hope it reminds you, this is God's intent. This is how much he cares and loves you. And if you're not living as a disciple today, according to the Bible, I encourage you to talk to someone about what that looks like. To start doing it, because this is the God that you follow. This is the God that we all follow and believe in. As I wrap up today, God wants you to have this attitude of a child. He doesn't want you to be dependent upon yourself or find your own worth in yourself. He wants you to be dependent on him. He wants you to have the mind of a child, to seek the Father that is God and to be a child of God. But in order to get to God, what do you need to cut off in your life? What is it that is dragging you or those around you into hell? And it may be painful and it may feel like you're missing out, but I promise you the reward is greater. Amen. Being on that road to heaven is greater. But also be encouraged with the knowledge that God desperately wants you as well. Let it be the motivation that you need to live a life for him. To push yourself to cut things off. To live that godly life. And to be hopping on heaven's road. Thank you.